So, in my case, I'm going to be speaking in English. So, my topic is inclusion. My topic related to students in vocational training courses, mainly for secondary education here in Portugal. And when I started off, I'm going to do a different presentation than what I usually do. So I'm actually going to open my brain and show you a little bit of my thought process and what's been going on in my head in these past months. So these are the research questions we started off with. So we wanted to, or I wanted to think about the materials, 11th grade vocational training courses, how effective they were to cater to students' needs, including the needs of students who are neurodivergent. When I'm talking about neurodivergent students, I'm talking particularly about students with ADHD, so attention deficit and hyperactivity disorders, ASD, autism spectrum disorders, and dyslexia. Why all these three together when apparently they could be considered too wide a subject to be combined? Because unfortunately, neither of these three comes along alone. So with ADHD, we've got data that supports most children with ADHD will have a comorbidity, which will be, for example, anxiety or dyslexia or ADHD. And the same happens with the other one. So it's very rare for a child who suffers from ADHD to just have ADHD. So all of these, in a way, they all come in a bunch, right? There are different degrees, there are different combinations that are right, that are possible. Sometimes it's not easy to understand which one is the main one. Is it, for example, autism, or is it attention deficit? Is it the other way around? So, but there's always something there going on more than just the one condition that we firstly identified. And then I wanted to know, so if the materials that the teachers and students are using aren't really catering to all these needs, what guidelines could we think about to give to teachers in order to help them create their own materials or adapt their own materials, right? But then, so this was the plan, to review the materials that we have in terms of vocational training education for secondary schools, professional courses, develop examples of materials that would be inclusive and suitable to use with more students inside the classroom, mainly those who present these issues with attention deficit, hyperactivity, autism, and dyslexia, gather the feedback from the teachers, from the students mainly, and create the guidelines. But then, this is my friend, Mr. Self-Questioning, right? Who's been a constant presence in the last couple of months, said, well, you know what, teachers choose the course books, not students, right? So in my head, a couple of questions started to come up as well. So how do teachers choose these materials, namely the course books? Do they use course books in vocational training courses? Because it is quite different if you're a student attending a high school, so a mainstream school, then you're absolutely going to be forced to be using a course book. But if you're in a professional school, then most schools will choose not to use course books, right? But there's a difference in this no obligation of professional schools to choose a course book, whereas if they are attending a mainstream school, they will be forced to have one. Then are there any guidelines to teachers on how to choose the materials? There are, but they're very generic. They're not just for English, they're one size fits for all the subjects that are going on. And when teachers choose the materials, what are they thinking about? What are they looking for? Do they consider the students who are neurodivergent? Do they consider the multiple levels of knowledge there are in their classes? And that leads me to another question, which is how are neurodivergent students perceived? in the courses. So, and this comes from my own experience as a teacher in vocational courses and also as a mother of two children who are neurodivergent, right? So, in my perspective, all of these are things that I believe in, right? I believe that we have more students who are neurodivergent in these courses, or at least students who present or display traits that are similar to those expected from students with neurodivergency. So, for example, the attention deficit, the inability to concentrate for longer periods of time, the fidgetiness, all of that. Also, I've also realized that we have more issues with behavior, but also with motivation. In my opinion, the two of them are quite linked. Vocational courses by some people are perceived as being easier than regular courses, and this is something that is interesting to look at, because in Portugal all subjects are, so the syllabus, so to speak, is called Aprendizagens Essenciais, and that's the document that rules what goes on inside a course, right? Now, if we look at the document for English 10th grade regular courses, the entry level is B1 in the CFR, right? The European, I can't remember how to know, but the framework. If we're looking at vocational courses, the entry level is A2. So it's a level down. There has to be something here to justify us immediately believing that students in vocational courses are going to know less than students attending regular courses. Also, inclusion means different things to different people at different points in their life, right? If I were to ask here what's the first word that comes to your brain when we talk about inclusion, we would probably have different things. And this also happens with teachers. And something that for me personally, I keep thinking about this, we have masters and we've got courses and trainings and all these professional development for teaching English in primeiro ciclo, right? So for primary school, third year, fourth year. However, and even though about 40% of students in secondary education attending professional courses, there's no professional development, there's no specific masters, there's no specific training regarding how to work with professional courses. And the profile of the student, the profile of the teacher have to be quite different. Otherwise, teachers tend to run away from these courses because they are perceived as being harder to work with and less motivated. So, I had my two first questions, and then I started thinking, okay, I've got more questions now, which is not always a good thing. So, could this just be my interpretation? I've been working with professional courses for more than 20 years now. I've got two children. I've had to fight for my children. So, could this just be my interpretation, or do other teachers feel the same, that there has to be more investment in the materials for professional schools, for professional courses? And how do the teachers end up choosing which materials to use and which materials not to use or to adapt when they have neurodivergent students in their classes? And this obviously together with the other two questions that I already had. And then the third one. So could all looking at this actually do help define the guidelines for creating or adapting ELT materials for neurodivergent students? And then comes in another aspect of who I am. So I'm a teacher, but I am also a materials writer. So I work with one of the publishers here in Porto, and I am in charge of producing materials for neurodivergent students for English since primary, third grade, until 12th grade, including mainstream and vocational courses. And this was my mind map in the beginning, right? So I had all my ideas organized, everything nice and neatly. I didn't put it, I didn't make it bigger because right now it doesn't matter because a lot of things changed. So my big monster said, you can try, but you're not getting anywhere with this. So I thought, okay, I have to start with those first questions. I have to go back. And before I get to the students, I have to remember it's the teachers who choose the materials. So let's think about those first. And he was very kind, and he worked with me on thinking of a questionnaire and the questions that we could ask the student. Because, you know what, I have never done a questionnaire in my life. I have no idea how to create a questionnaire. So I went and I studied it. And you see, I'm very proud of the things that I studied about questionnaires, right? But what did I learn from this? I learned that basically, first of all, the questions have to be extremely clear. I have to focus on something really specific, otherwise the tendency to go off rails and start asking one thing and then at the same time trying to find out about something else is a considerable risk. I learned about how to ask the questions in a way that we would be avoiding jargon, but also the double-barreled questions, ambiguity, making it concise, right? Otherwise, it's very interesting for me. You know, I look at that questionnaire and I love it. But then people want to look at it and they don't want to spend 15, 20 minutes going through it, right? So I also thought and learned about piloting and actually making sure it's okay to be used, and also all the nuances that come from the factors that are related to the people who are answering the questionnaire. So I had a first draft of the questionnaire. I sent it to Professor Andrew. He checked it. I also shared it with 3 colleagues working at ES so that they could also give me their feedback. With all of that, I redid it and I set it up in a digital platform. I'll be talking about that in a second. And there was first test piloting at API, annual conference. So this is the conference for English language teachers in Portugal. This year it was in Lisbon, over 800 participants. So it was a nice place to give it a go. So the questionnaire. I didn't want to use Google Forms for a number of issues, right? Data, privacy, security, all sort of things, right? And coming from a house where there's a lot of IT going on, and myself being really fond of technology, I thought, okay, let me find out what the university has that can help me to create a questionnaire. And the tool that we have available is this one, inquérito.p.pt. I don't know if everybody has worked with it here before, if you know exactly how it works. So the first thing that you have to know is that us as students cannot do anything there. So the first thing is I sent an email saying, okay, I tried to log in using my credentials, and there's nothing I can do. And he said, obviously, there's nothing you can do because your teacher, your supervisor needs to be on the platform. So I had to ask Andrew to get in touch with them, register, and only after that, he had to set up the questionnaire, just open it, and then I could go in and work. So the process is quite it's not difficult, a lot of red tape without really being necessary. But then once you go in, it's not the most user-friendly environment to be in, right? And at the time, I thought, I really want to do this here because, you know, I don't know if I want to go through the trouble of doing all of this, maybe I can find a solution. But then, considering the things that I wanted to do. For example, I wanted to make sure that if the teachers answered a certain question in a certain way, they would be redirected to another specific question, and that all of these things, this was the hardest part of setting up, right? But I did do it in the end. If anybody wants to do this and they want help, I'm now able to help anyone with this. So the questionnaire was divided into 5 sections. The first one is the introduction, just shows the first part. Then section 2 talks about the background of the teachers, their teaching experience, and also the perception that they have of their students. The third part focuses primarily on ELT materials, right? Generally speaking, and this is when I start going into, are you teaching professional courses? Have you been teaching professional courses? Are you aware of the materials that exist? Are you not? And so on and so forth. And then people jump to section 4, or they are directed to section 5. Section 4 is going to be specifically about ELT materials, but in a neurodivergent way, inclusive way. And this is where you got more questions, 18 questions. And then the last section is about remarks and follow-up. It only has 4 questions, and the 4 questions are just this. Would you like to know about the results of this? Yes or no? If yes, please leave your email. And the last one is, would you agree to be interviewed 30 minutes on Zoom? Yes or no? If so, please leave your email, right? So that was the last part. Then, how was I going to make this work, right? So, this was the conference I was telling you about. So this is API's yearly annual conference, and I was blessed. I had a room full with 200 teachers attending my session. So at the end, I said they wanted my presentation. I said, lovely, I will give you my presentation. And I should have done what my colleague said, which was force them to do the questionnaire in order to get your materials. I was stupid, I didn't. So I just gave them 2 QR codes, one to download my presentation and another QR code for the questionnaire. Yes, you were there. I was sweet. I am very, very sweet. Well, nonetheless, 55 people on the day went in, right? But only 11 fully filled it in, right? But I haven't given up yet. Not yet. So I did get some feedback. Some people saying that it took them longer than the 15, 20 minutes. I did have people telling me that 1 or 2 questions in particular weren't very clear for them. So I'm going to take another approach. So instead of feeling miserable about having had this awesome opportunity and having thrown it away, I'm going to refine the questionnaire, improve it, and I'm going to ask API for assistance. Why? Because they will send out an email to all their the people, the associates, thank you, all the associates, asking them to participate in the questionnaire. Plus, when I do that, I'm going to throw in a candy, which is if you do go in and if you do fill this in, at the end, you will have access to a folder full of material. Okay, so that's what I am going to do this time. And I've got a list of over 700 schools running professional courses in Portugal, mainland and the Açores and Madeira, which I plan to contact. I'm going to hit another problem here because there are limits to how many emails you can send. Now, again, university has a system to send out newsletters, but students can't access those. those services, and teachers apparently can also not access those services. So what I was advised to do by the IT department is you send out 50 emails a day to make sure that your account is not going to be blocked. So this is going to be interesting. Okay, but I'm still trying to negotiate with them. I'm
just you can ask for unidade de divulgação de eventos, but you need to have the unidade de proteção de dados
active. Yeah.
But they can send a newsletter, like they can email all the university of colleges.
Yes, but that's not what I want. I want these 700 schools.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Otherwise, it would be a dynamic email, right? Like we send in, yeah. But then it's not, because it's these 700 schools, so it's external email. So I only have two options. Either I do it like they told me to, 50 emails a day to make sure my account doesn't block, or I use MailChimp or another system like that. I still need to check the pros and the cons. I would rather use the university account, but I need to see if I can convince someone in the UP Digital to give me some margin here.
I'm to schedule 15 per day.
Jesus Christ. So 700 is I would rather have this finished before the end of the academic year for them, right? So after that, hopefully I will have more than just the 4 people who for now in those 11 volunteered to participate in the interview. And I also need to develop the script for those interviews, interview them, and then with those volunteers select or ask in the interview if there are any available to test the materials. And this is another issue, because initially I thought create materials for neurodivergent students, and I realized I'm not being very smart. Why? Because I've been creating materials for neurodivergent students for I don't know how many years. So I've got recently published materials for professional schools, because the 12th grade book is being released this year for the new academic year, but I've got the 10th grade and I've got the 11th grade materials available to use. So I might use those. So one of the questions that I asked the teachers in the questionnaire is which book they're using, if they're using a book, right? I have access to all the materials that were created for inclusive education, right? And I can start from there, even though this is the part where I am now a bit lost and trying to understand. But I'll cross that bridge when I get there. First, I need to start working on the answers and getting the questionnaire wrote down. Then data collection, analysis, and hopefully through all of this work on the theoretical framework and all that support that needs to be for UDL, so universal ULD, it's not UDL, it's ULD, universal learning design, scaffolding, second language learning, and then more on ADHD and ASD and dyslexia. I had a very interesting suggestion from the doctor of one of my children, the child psychiatrist of one of my children. She works at the hospital in San Antonio, which is where my boy goes to appointments. And she said that they would be very interested in working with us to find out more about this connection of materials, learning materials, and children with these issues. So at least that's a door that's open for us, or maybe in the future for more studies. That said, so these are all the books that have been released for vocational training recently. So in the first, you've got there are only 3 publishers working with professional courses. That is Real, which is the publisher I work with, then Porta Editora, and then Texto Editora that belongs to the Leia group. Now, the ones at the top are the ones that were released 2 years ago for the 10th grade, then in the middle last year released the 11th grade, and this year the 12th grade that is being released. The books are not fully available yet. I've got access to a few things, but not everything. Nevertheless, in the beginning, I thought about working with the 11th grade. I still think that working with the 11th grade is, for me, the best grade to work with. Why? Because of the complexity of the topics that are being worked on, not just in terms of themes, but also in terms of language. So there's a lot of challenging grammar there, and a lot of challenging topics in terms of language, vocabulary there. So I think the 11th grade is a good year to work with. I do need to bear in mind one thing. We won't know until later this year, which is the Aprendizagens Essenciais document is being reviewed for English. So I know that we can expect a few changes. I don't know exactly what is going to be changed. I don't know, for example, if the entry level is going to change. So instead of an A2, it's going to go up to B1, because these books they have worked on that basis. So we've got A2, A2 B1, the first one, then it's B1.1, and this one here is B1.2. B1.2, yeah, and here it's going to be B1.2/B2, but it's not B2. It's not a B2 level. So that's it. And thank you.